What is going on, my friends? Lauren Sisler here with AL.com. Happy Monday to all of you. Happy spring, I guess post-spring. I don't know what you want to call this. Alabama A-Day in the books for 2021. It was great to have an A-Day. Mike Rodak was there. He was in the press box. He got to witness it all. He's here to break things down on this edition of AL.com's SEC Insider. And Mike, a season ago, we didn't have a spring. We pretty much were kind of in the beginning phases of the pandemic and not quite sure what was going to happen with all that. And then here we are this year, the stadium obviously at 50% capacity, but I was pretty impressed with the crowd there. I felt like they did a great job of filling it out. We saw, a nice, I guess, response from the fans and the excitement that surrounded the 2021 team and the defending national champs.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it felt more like football than I think anything we've had really in the past year. I mean, it definitely felt more like football than anything I experienced last year at Bryant-Denny. So yeah, it was a good crowd. It was a great day. I think it's useful for a lot of these players to get on the field and kind of play in front of some people because they haven't. A lot of these young guys haven't. There was no spring game last year. I mean, the media hasn't been allowed to practice now since the 2019 season. So it was really just that core group of players that we saw in the field last year. And a lot of those guys are gone now, especially in the offensive side to the NFL. So most of the players that we saw on Saturday, this is their first time actually playing football in front of Alabama fans in college. And that's useful experience because as we saw last year, when some of those young guys got on the field who didn't have a chance in the spring to get on the field, it didn't always go so well. And so I think the hope from Alabama is that now that they've had this time in the spring, that these young guys will be in a better spot, come the fall.
Yeah, no doubt. And I had the opportunity to cover the game for ESPN, and it was really interesting talking to Mac Jones. Obviously, the team captains came back from the 2019 season and 2020 to do the Walk of Fame, put the hand in the cleat print and the cement, enshrine themselves, and of course, just be there for the festivities and to celebrate the national championship win afterwards. And it was interesting talking to Mac Jones. He had told me before the game, he said, Lauren, he's like, look, A-Day absolutely defined my career. Being able to go out, he said, first year A-Day, like literally blew my confidence, wind out of the sails. I was horrible and, just didn't know what direction I was going to go. And then each year I started to build my confidence up a little bit more and a little bit more. And it really just prepared me for ultimately getting the opportunity to play when my turn came. And so, I think that's the case for a lot of these guys. Bryce Young, the quarterback, he is, obviously took first team reps throughout the spring. Nick Saban and the coaching staff pretty high on him and feel like he's going to, be able to step in, and we'll kind of dig into that as we get into the offensive side of the football. But not having spring last year was huge for Bryce Young. And I think that, getting to come in and really put in the reps and have the performance that he did. You can see the stats there, 25 of 44, 333 yards, 1 touchdown. He ended up playing all 4 quarters, which doesn't always happen in these spring games, but I know that they wanted to kind of let him loose and let him roll. So yeah, I'll just get your thoughts right there from the offensive side of the ball. There's my puppy. From the offensive side of the ball, what were your thoughts on Bryce Young and sort of his performance and how he really stepped up? And again, the media has not been available to be able to watch any of practice. So we've only seen a couple things on video, whatever Alabama kind of sends us.
Right. And the little bit we saw from him last year, I think back to the Missouri game, the Tennessee game, some of those blowouts basically where he actually saw the field and managing the offense, getting to the line of scrimmage, getting the play call out. That was an issue sometimes. He took a delay a game that I can remember, took a couple sacks in the red zone where he was holding the ball too long. So all those things I think were areas for him to clean up, and it really seems like he has done that this spring. And Nick Saban talks about trying to make him feel like he's the guy out there in terms of being a leader and having a presence out there. And I think he certainly showed more of that on Saturday than what we saw in live action last year. So that's definitely a step forward. And then just from a talent standpoint, I think getting outside the pocket, being able to throw accurately down the field, he certainly showed some of that. The Cameron Latu touchdown, I think partly was on the defense. As you can see there, he was pretty wide open. I know Nick Saban said at halftime that there's no defensive play call in their book that leaves the tight end wide open like that it was a mental error. But they are high on Bryce Young. They're high on Cameron Latu. I think that was a sign of what they can do this season. And besides that, even just some of the other throws that he made, I thought were those are big time throws. And it wasn't there was only one offensive touchdown in the game. It wasn't like this was some high scoring affair, but for the sort of game that it was, I think he played pretty well. And as it's noted, he was the MVP of the game as picked by the media.
Well, and I'll tell you what, and I'm going to put this puppy on the ground because she's driving me nuts today. Normally she behaves, and for some reason today she's not behaving. So, one thing it's worth noting, there were several key players out for this game due to health reasons. We kind of know the drill there. Several players were already out for this spring, some key players on the offensive line. Obviously, Malachi Moore being another one, John Mechie. So we knew we weren't going to see him. But then we obviously kind of got the news that there were some issues, obviously health concerns. We sort of know the drill again on that. And so we didn't get to see some of the heavy hitters, Brian Robinson, breakout running back that we were expecting to see and hoping to see. But he's supposed to have an outstanding year, kind of taking that number one running back spot. Obviously, the wide receiver group pretty deep at this point. And I know the coaching staff pretty much said the wide receivers, what they have available and coming back is going to be, pretty tremendous. So we obviously didn't get to see what maybe we thought we would with some guys out. But I will say Agiye Hall certainly impressed a lot of people, especially with those one-handed grabs. He's just explosive. He makes those contested catches. And I'll tell you, I was on the sidelines and I saw Bryce Young when Agiye made one of those catches, and literally he just like looked up, and the look on his face was just like, are you kidding me? So even just kind of the response from him, because Agiye, I guess, was going up. I think he was because he was on the same team, right? But with Paul Tyson as quarterback, is that correct?
Right. Yeah. So he was playing. Hall was playing with the second team offense, which would have been Tyson and Braxton Barker, the walk on. And
yes.
A couple of those throws came from Barker. As you can see, this 37-yarder was actually Barker's first throw of the game. And it's the number 25 defense.
Yes. Yep.
Right. Number 25 is DJ Douglas. He's a walk-on corner. So I think you have to discount it a little bit, just given that he was playing against second-team defense. It wasn't this great first-team Alabama defense that we expect. But when you play like that on the second team, by the time August rolls around, maybe you get some first-team reps. And I think that's probably where things are headed for Agiye Hall. And like you mentioned, there's a lot of receivers, a lot of talent. I think just trying to sort it out and figure out who are those guys, because I think they know John Mechie is their top guy. I think they know Slade Bolden's going to be on the field a lot as a slot guy, and maybe a little bit more as well. It's just who's that number 3 and 4. And I think they're still searching among Hall, Javon Baker, Xavier Williams, Tyu Jones-Bell. Like there's a group of guys there. Trayshawn Holden, who had 14 targets, 9 catches on Saturday, pretty good game himself. There's a group of guys I think they're trying to sort through, and they're all very talented. It's just a matter of getting them to play consistently well. And I think it was a pretty big step in that direction for Hall, certainly on Saturday.
Yeah, no doubt. And I kind of want to go to the defensive side of the football. Just kind of going through that again. Will Anderson did not play, and I think that was someone that we looked forward to seeing. And by all accounts, and talking to the coaching staff, Pete Golding pretty much said that Will Anderson is the closest thing to a pro football player that he's seen as a freshman. So obviously a very tremendous skill set, really locked in. So that was somebody that was absent that we were really excited to see at the linebacker position. But talking about the defense, maybe specifically honing in on the outside linebacker position, the corners, I know you wanted to talk about that. What were your thoughts kind of there and sort of where this team is defensively?
Yeah, some of the issues they had at linebacker in terms of multiple guys being out, Christian Harris, Shane Lee, Anderson, Drew Sanders were all out. It really allowed one guy in particular to step up and play a lot, and that was Chris Braswell, who essentially started the game at outside linebacker, who didn't play at all last year. Kind of a forgotten name, you might say, behind some other 5-star guys, and Anderson, who got on the field right away, and then Drew Sanders, who got on the field a decent amount as a freshman too. And Braswell, it seemed like he was maybe a little bit behind those guys, but then he has this great game on Saturday where he makes the play against Kendall Randolph, the right tackle right there, and hits Bryce Young in the blindside, forces that fumble, causes the touchdown.
Okay.
And that's a guy who I think even Saban said before, if you show that sort of pass rush ability, you're probably going to get on the field. And whether it's a pass rush situation, third down, et cetera, I think they'll find a spot for him. And it's not like Alabama has produced a ton of these edge rushers over the years, even with Saban. it's potentially, like, you talk about Will Anderson, you talk about Braswell, you talk about Drew Sanders if he gets back here and plays some. I mean, you got some talent there at outside linebacker, maybe a little bit more than they've had in years past.
Yeah, definitely. And just kind of overall, it was interesting. Saban was mic'd up for the majority of the game. So it was really kind of cool to hear him sort of getting on guys, some good, some bad. And I know we talked about before we jumped on the broadcast, but it was kind of interesting sort of how his demeanor changed when he was talking to different guys. When he would talk to Bryce Young, it was a little bit more, calm, cool, collected. Hey, this read, that read, just kind of giving him more guidance and direction. But then, especially on the defensive side of the ball, just lighten those guys up, and it was kind of just, interesting to hear sort of his direction and how he kind of handles things. Because we as the media get to see it obviously in practice, where from afar, we're kind of getting to hear him yell at the players and sort of, how he's coaching them up, but not always making the audibles very clear as to what he's saying to them. So it was really cool to kind of get that perspective. Just kind of your thoughts, because I know that they're really high on this defense and they feel that this defense could perhaps be as close to the 2012 defense, maybe a couple key pieces missing there, figuring some things out still. But, what about this defense, I guess, are you most excited to see when all those key pieces are in place and everyone is available to play?
Yeah, I mean, the secondary, I think, has returning 4 guys from last year, just trying to find that 5th starter, which is kind of the opposite of where they were last year when they had 1 starter back and they're basically replacing 4 starters. So they're in a much better spot back there. I think they can certainly be better against some of these high-flying passing attacks. Remember the Florida game last year, the Ole Miss, like there were some issues in the secondary last year. I would anticipate them being better in those sort of games this year. Do they have a number 1 corner like Pat Surtain, and who's probably a top 10 pick? I don't know if Josh Jobe is quite at that level, but I think they're probably deeper. And when you look at Jalen Armour-Davis, who I think had a pretty good game on Saturday, and then Quincy McKinstry, who had the interception in the second half, he potentially could work his way in to the mix at corner. And then the 2 slot guys who they really like, and Malachi Moore, who didn't play, he was in uniform but didn't play on Saturday, and then Brian Branch. And then at safety, Jordan Battle is 3rd-year starter essentially now, and trying to find the 2nd starter. DeMarco Hellum seems to be their guy there. So, but then even Christian Story, I should mention too, the sophomore safety who had the interception, the one that nearly got Nick Saban run over. He can certainly see the field as well. Talented player out of Alabama. So I think they're deeper. There's, I think, a lot of young talent that they have back there, and it's just a matter of sorting out who's going to play where and how that group comes together by September.
Yeah, definitely. And just as we kind of wrap things up, obviously kind of getting A-Day in the books, it was fun to finally sort of see things, because in a way it was sort of like a blank slate for all of us, like, okay, what can we expect, what are we going to see, and then just kind of to let things left things kind of wide open. One thing I will say, kind of circling back to the offense, obviously with the new offensive coordinator they have in Bill O'Brien, the terminology never changes. And that's one thing Nick Saban talks about over and over again. Terminology doesn't change. They'll put a couple wrinkles in there, but it was interesting talking to Chris Owens on the offensive line. He said specifically, we're having to mix guys in and out constantly. We really haven't figured out that 5 combination yet. We haven't figured out who's going to be out there. Injuries, obviously guys, not being able to play, not being available, made it a little bit more difficult. But he did say that right now the transition from where they were at with Sarkisian, because I know everyone on that team really likes Sarkisian a lot as well. They feel the transition has been very smooth, and in many ways said that, this offense is reminiscent some of when Brian Daboll was here, because sort of that NFL mindset, what he brought from the Patriots, and, they feel there's a lot of similarities and connections there. But, it was pretty cool kind of listening to O'Brien talk and coming in and saying, I feel like we have more talent offensively than a lot of professional teams do, like pro teams do, just because of like the amount of receivers, and everyone in that room can go out and play. Whereas, at the pros, you've got your 1, 2, 3, and 4, and that's it. Like, that's it. Like, you can't go way down into the depth chart and expect the guy to go out there and play. So, I thought that was kind of interesting. But yeah, I guess, what are your final takeaways, from this spring? What are you most excited about coming up in the fall from the defending champs in Alabama?
Yeah, well, I think you just mentioned it a little bit right there in terms of O'Brien, and and what he might bring. I know he's really high on Agiye Hall, and O'Brien's seen some guys in his day. I mean, he coached DeAndre Hopkins in Houston, traded him later, but he coached him for a little while there. He was Randy Moss's position coach, if I'm not mistaken, for 1 year in New England. And, he's been around a lot of football players, and I certainly take his word for it. When he says that Agiye Hall is going to be a really good player, I think, certainly that seems to be the case. So, just seeing these receivers and kind of the next wave for Alabama, given how many guys they've lost on offense, but how much incoming talent that they have, not just a receiver, but even offensive line with Tommy Brockemeyer, J.C. Latham, or the second team tackles they played with the Crimson team on Saturday, and just getting a look at those guys. I mean, they look like NFL tackles, and they probably will be in 4 years. So it's interesting just having sort of this clay that they can mold and build it into a new version of Alabama that I think right now most people would agree is probably the favorites to win it all again, but with a largely different group of players in offense. That's hard to do, but they're pretty good at doing it. So just watching that unfold this year, I think will be be fun to watch.
Hey, that's a good way to kind of put things. I guess you call that a metaphor, right? Where you can
I try
sort of mold things. Alabama's like clay, constantly molding things, figuring things out, and out with the old, in with the new, and that just seems to be kind of how they're used to doing things and how they're built. So you have pretty much a brand new offense, and the expectation is they're not going to miss a beat, and they're going to come out and have a strong performance. So again, good stuff from you. We appreciate it, Mike. And sorry, Maggie over here, my little pup decided now she's sleeping at my feet, so now she's behaving. Now that we're done, so that's how it goes. But hey, we appreciate you guys watching. And we'll be back with more as we continue sort of breaking things down from the football season. But of course, we're coming up on the NFL draft, so we'll be looking forward to seeing how things shake out there here in the next couple of weeks. So everyone have a wonderful rest of your